Welcome back. Now we are going to focus on some other pages. So let's get started with a search. We are going to do it kind of quickly, but this is the way that we do the projects and you should do the projects. It's the way to create the projects with the design system, and literally you can instantly create the pages. So let's see how quickly we can do the search page. So basically what we have is just the search input bar. On the bottom we have the navigation bar. On the next page we have the typing search, and we have the profiles down below. So we are going to duplicate the search, remove these elements, and we literally have the group on the bottom that we are going to change. It's going to be our navigation bar, but we are going to now change the search icon, or the whole this search section, to the white, and change this one to the gray 3. Okay, and what we need is just input with the search on the top. So basically, let's say we can have what we said, 78 is distance usually between the elements on the top. Let's see how much this is. For example, 74, 60, 76. Okay, so let's change it to 76. And what we need is user detail. In this case, what we can do is just change the user settings to the black, and this one to the black. Let's change this thing down below to the username. And let's change it just to maybe gray 5, or maybe something else, even gray 4, I think should work really nicely. Okay. And also what we have here is our captions that are here, but we are seeing that they are 60% white. What we can do is change those even, and or maybe change them in the design system. So let's change this one to, let's say, gray 2. I think that's fine. Gray 1. Gray 1 even could work. Yeah. And this one, in this case, we don't even need it, so I will just hide it. And now, as we are seeing, we can just hug the component and change it maybe to something like this, for example. Okay, and what we can do is just duplicate it, select them on the side, Shift A, set the distance maybe even to the 12 is totally fine. Distance between those elements could be, let's say, 20, and the distance between those elements could be something else, but what we need to do is set this to the back. Okay, we have a search, and let's see, the distance is 76, so totally fine for the searching page. Basically we can change this to the typing. Okay, and we can change this to the black. We have completed the search page, and we can just redo the process of just removing that, change this to the, let's say, what was previous. Let me just check it. In this case, it's changed. So let me change the input to something else. For example, let's see, the search. Let me see, it's going to be gray 4. So just change it to the gray 4. Okay. And for example, we can just type here search. So basically we have the page for the searching, and when we start typing we can see the profiles. What we can also do is just start selecting those circles, use our plugin, and just run it through our interface. Okay, so now that we've done that, the next thing what we need to focus on is completing this posting page. So basically what you can do is just duplicate even the previous one, posting, okay, change the elements to something else, for example, even this can be gray 3, and change this one to the white. Okay. And now what we are going to see is to remove this search, and we can see we have our icon or image that we are going to upload, and down below we are going to see our pictures from the gallery. So what we are going to do now is try to mimic something else. We are not probably going to do exactly the same as this one, but let me just try and see what can we do. Okay, so let's copy this image here, and what we can even do is just duplicate this image from the fill of previous images and just Command V to this one. What we can also do is duplicate the previous text. For example, this one is back, but we can just duplicate it here and say next. Okay, and down below what we need is our mini gallery, for example. So how we are going to do that is duplicate this image, and let's first try to see what can we work with. So we can do the 3x3, and that's totally fine, and we are going to do that, but we also need proper scaling for those pictures. Okay, so let's Shift A those pictures, set the distance between them, let's say 4, and the fixed width to 361. And now we have kind of different sizes for the images. So basically what you can do is even to hold, select them all, and try to scale them down. For example, what you can do is basically place them on the top and just try to scale it, and you are seeing now that we have a problem. It's usually not going to be exactly the same width and height because we cannot divide 361 with a 3, even it's going to be kind of strange number, so it doesn't work like that. But we can try to manage with that width of 117 with a height of 118. It doesn't work exactly as we intended, but this is our best possible option in this case. Let's add this to the back. And other thing what we can do even is maybe to change this to maybe some pull bar. For example, when you pull this up, it's going to pull out all of our pictures. So for example, we have this full-on frame. Let's even duplicate even more pictures within that frame, and what we can do is expand it. Okay, so we can do the fixed width of 361 to 393, place the vertical horizontal paddings to 16, align it to the center, and let's set the up as well to the 16. Let's set the stroke to the gray 1. Okay, let's change the corner radius to the 8, and now we can see maybe something else that works behind that. Even what we can do is even remove that stroke and even place the back color to the gray 1, for example. And when what we need as well is maybe on the top we can set it to 24, and what we can do is add our line that literally displays that we can pull our pictures up. What I would like also to do is to select all of those pictures and change the corner radius to the 8, for example, so we can have this, or even we can change it to the 4. Let's see how that's going to look like. Okay, totally fine, totally nice. We can change that to the 4. I'm just trying to see what can work with this one, what can doesn't. For example, in this case, imagine using this color, it doesn't look right. So basically gray one should be universal color for those kind of pulling pictures. Or what you can do is literally just stick with stroke with the gray one. And basically what we can do is go to this frame, add another frame. For example, it can be 1 pixel with 32 width. Select the fill and change that maybe to the gray 6. Okay, change this to the 99, so we have this corner radius properly, and we can move it when we go to the absolute position. See, now we don't have it inside that frame, but we have it as an absolute position within those frames. We can even change the height to the 2. Let's see what's that going to look like. 2 is totally fine. Even 4 is also totally fine. Let's change the gray maybe to, let's see what can work. Maybe gray 5. That's okay. Let me try and see. The distance is 10, for example. In this case, it doesn't need to be exactly pixel perfect, but just for the reference. And what we can do is, for example, within those next text and image, we can set the distance between them, for example, 16. Distance between those elements should be, for example, 16 as well. Let's place them in the back. Okay, and let's see, the distance is around 78, for example, as it's going to be exactly the same, 76, as we have for our each frame. Okay, and when you click next, it's going to load you up to another screen. Let's just check our colors. So let's change everything to something else. And we have this D9 color. It's just for the picture back color. We can just remove that and we are totally fine. And what we can do now is duplicate this post. Remove all of those things. Remove even this next. We can ungroup that. And ungroup again. Remove this next. And what we can do is, for example, copy this arrow. Now, maybe the question for you would be why we have the next text right here and we have the back arrow right there. Basically, sometimes you want to provide exactly the same exact detail or exact purpose of the element. And in this case, next it's going to work within this frame. And now when you go on the Instagram, sometimes you're going to see the arrows, sometimes you're going to see the text. It's because you want to provide exact information that user is going to do, because next is more important than just seeing the arrow for the back. And basically, imagine if we had this button, for example, that says login, and now imagine if it's just an arrow. It doesn't work like that, and in this case we have back because we want to have the same consistency between the elements. For example, in this case it's login and register, and we can go back and register, and we have now just have the register and thank you. So basically that's the way that I'm doing the projects, and that's the way that you should think about those projects. So sometimes it needs to be different, sometimes it doesn't. It all depends on the purpose of those elements. So now what we are going to do is auto layout these two, and let's see the distance. Now it's kind of strange, but what we can do is just change it maybe to the 12. Let's see, we can put it as 76, and we need the description on the bottom. So basically just a normal input, okay, and type description. Okay, And what we can do is tap enter 3 times, and now we have our description on the bottom, and we can have the huge button that says post. Okay, and we can auto layout as well these two elements. For example, 24 is totally fine, and we can have this post, for example, as well, shift A, and let's say 80 for the distance between those elements. So now we have the posting option, so you select the photos or the photo, and what we need is selection of the photo. So for example, what we can do is just add the filling, and in this case it can be maybe some tint of the blue or some darker color, it doesn't really matter. But what you can do is increase the opacity, for example, to the 50%, and it's going to display what photo we've chosen. So for example, let's make it slightly blue, for example, like this, and add our stroke to maybe to the primary. So basically we can see this is the photo that we selected, and when we go next, it's going to display different screen. Okay, the next thing what we can work on is notification. So it's just a simple interface. Now in this case we are not going to see the numbers, we are going to see the images. Okay, how we are going to do that? Basically I will try my best to ungroup the previous variant, and I will just add the rectangle besides that. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just duplicate this previous screen. Okay, type the notification, or we can just copy it. Okay, remove everything, and now change the colors. This one to the gray 3, this one to the white. Okay, and literally what we need is just a user liked your photo, and we are going to see that, and maybe we can add today, this week, and etc. Okay, so let's add our user detail, change the text to something else. I'm also seeing that we have the wrong text opacity, so I will try my best to set something else. Let's see, for example, gray 3 and black on the top, and for example, like your picture. And what we can do is detach the instance, and now it's not going to be connected with our previous design system. So basically the changes that we are going to do with the design system, they're not going to display it with this screen, but it doesn't really matter because mostly it's just going to be a totally separate screen. So what we can do is go here, and I like to work with frames more even than rectangles, and let's create some rectangle right here, or frame right here, remove that number and just fill out this picture, for example, for this one. Okay, let's change the corner radius maybe to the 2 even, and what we need is name and surname. So for example, we can just put the @username, maybe place this as today, and yesterday, or this week, for example. Okay, select these two. It can be a body or subheading even. Change this to maybe gray 6, for example. And what we are going to do now is just duplicate these things, duplicate them, within that elements, auto layout all of them, and let's set the distance between them as 12. Okay, send them to the back, and now let's just auto layout these elements as well, set the distance maybe to the 16. Okay, send it to the back, and let's just check the distance maybe to 76. Okay, we now have the distance between those things, so let's set it to the 16, and now we have our notifications done, but we also need the rectangles or the circles to be filled with user avatars. So let's just insert random photos. Okay, so basically now we have the profile that liked our picture on the post, so when we click on it, it's going to display the post, and when we click on the username, it's going to display basically just a profile for the user. So in the next video, we will try to finish up this whole design. It's going to be about the profile section.